Hey guys, my name's O6, welcome to the show. Today I'm here to tell you all about the fascinating return of Jesus.
So the first thing I'm going to tell you is that the person I am is actually a person who lived on earth in the first century. And my name is Jesus. And I'm serious.
Yes folks, Jesus is back. He's alive today and he has an important message for you. But we'll get to that shortly. America. These days, you'd almost be forgiven for thinking that Christianity was an American creation. Jesus and the US of A just seem to fit so snugly together. That said, we can definitely credit the States for developing some uniquely American brands of Christianity, like Mormonism and the Jehovah's Witnesses. But hold on, America, you're not the only Christian innovators. No, there's a new player in town, and he's a true blue Aussie bloke.
I guess there'll always be people who don't believe you're Jesus, who
of course,
will be quite offended by a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah, and there were lots of people in the first century who didn't believe I was the Messiah and were offended by what I said, and in fact I died at the hands of some of them.
This man is A.J. Miller, aka Jesus. The Jesus, as in, healed the sick and died at the hands of the Romans 2,000 years ago, Jesus. If you were waiting for the return of the Son of God, the wait is over, my friends. Like a lot of Christians, AJ's also been born again. He's been born twice. Once as Jesus in the first century, and once as Alan John Miller in Loxton, South Australia, in 1963. AJ's parents were both Jehovah's Witnesses, and he was raised in that tradition. As a youngster, he'd spend his holidays going door to door to spread the good word about Jesus, a person that he'd eventually come to understand was himself. He left high school early to take on a course in computers and founded an IT consultancy business. Before AJ was 21, he married his 19-year-old teenage sweetheart, Cherie Newman, and the two of them continued to be quite active members of their local Jehovah's Witness community. By his early 30s, AJ had risen to become a leader among his local witnesses and now had two young sons with his wife. At this time, he began to be plagued by strange memories of a past life as Jesus in the first century and reports that he sought professional help.
I didn't put them together as, oh, I'm Jesus from that. And so I just sort of slotted it into the back of my head and went merrily on with my life.
Almost another 10 years down the road, AJ's epiphany finally came.
I remember all of the events of my crucifixion. I understood what was going on. I understood the reason for my death.
These dreams and memories, they were all happening for a reason.
So when you say memories, what sort of things are we talking about?
Memories of my life, of what happened
death?
in the first century, my death, yeah. They were
Your
traumatic.
resurrection.
Yes.
God reveals to him that he was Jesus. In turn, AJ revealed his Jesushood to his parents, to his wife, to his sons.
Is it true that your mother tried to commit you to a psychiatric ward?
Yes, it is true.
Additionally, his marriage fell apart. Yes, Jesus got divorced.
Before he became Jesus, Miller was a Jehovah's Witness pastor, but fell out with the church over an incident with a prostitute.
Yes, Jesus allegedly cheated on his wife. There are a number of differences between AJ's version of Jesus and the Jesus that most mainstream Christianities are familiar with. But before we get to those, why isn't his name just Jesus? Why are people calling him AJ? Shouldn't it just be Jesus? I mean, AJ is a pretty odd name for the savior of mankind. Well, I guess AJ isn't that odd. I mean, it could be worse.
Please welcome Robert Faggot.
Faggot is rather an odd name.
Yeah, you know, it is an odd name.
How many are still eating meat? Pretty much everyone. There are law of compensation issues associated with eating meat. And as soon as you get into this place, do you think you're going to be eating another bit of meat?
Another one of the first things that I noticed was that unlike the biblical Jesus, AJ is a vegetarian. Whereas in Mark and in Acts, Jesus declares all foods to be clean. The Bible Jesus even miraculously fed fish to a crowd of people. That wasn't very vegetarian of you, was it, Jesus? Yeah, AJ is not the common biblical Jesus that many people are familiar with, and it goes a lot deeper than vegetarianism.
As a courtesy, if you are who you say you are, would you not have called upon the big Christian leaders and said, "Hello, Holy Father the Pope, just to let you know, I'm here, I'm back in town"?
Well, my policy has always been, for the last 2,000 years, never to force myself onto people. So I would never force myself onto the Pope or force myself onto a religious leader to have a discussion. If they want to have a discussion with me, I'm very open to having a discussion with them.
And have they made any contact with you?
No, at this point, no, because they view me, as most people do, as some kind of cult leader who wants to do something.
Do you know how you
else.
could change that? You could change that by, for instance, these glasses of water in front of us. You could change that by turning these into wine. You could change that by, people are going to say, you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, go on then, Jesus, impress me. Show me a miracle.
Prove it, yeah.
You might think that AJ's differences from the mainstream biblical Jesus that most mainstream Christians are familiar with would count against him. That people would notice these differences and say, haha, see, he's not the real Jesus. But AJ actually uses these differences between his version of Jesus and the Jesus you'll find in the Bible to count in his favour, to build the credibility of his claims.
Yes, well, in the first century, whenever somebody wanted me to impress them, I generally didn't. But the reality is that it wasn't until I was 31 in the first century that I could perform any miracles at all, and I never turned water into wine. Actually, that's a myth. But I did perform other miracles in the first century once I became at one with God.
So, did you walk on water?
No.
Did you raise Lazarus from the dead?
Yes.
So, are you saying that you did some sort of miracles, but not other sorts?
There's a few miracles in the Bible I didn't do, but the rest you did? The rest I did.
Like
most of the miracles involving recovery of people's sight, the recovery of their limbs. But the walking on water is one of the ones I didn't do.
Yes.
Another one that I didn't do was turning the water into wine.
You didn't, so you couldn't give us a nice little.
You want a job now, do you? No. No.
You see, by AJ calling some of the biblical miracles legitimate and some of them fabrications, he projects this idea that he is truly concerned about honesty and factual accuracy, and that he's got the authority and the knowledge, the credibility to override these Bible stories, and that there are Bible miracles that he can't or didn't perform back in the day, so please adjust your current expectations of his ability to perform miracles today.
And as I've said to people nowadays, I'm not yet at one with God again. I've got to go through the same process that I went through in the first century. Once I become at one with God again, both of us expect to be able to perform what people might call miracles. But to us, they're just the realities of being at one with God.
When AJ harps on about the idea that the Bible is not an accurate account of my life, it protects him from having to explain or justify some of the shitty things that Jesus did, like sending those evil spirits into pigs before they were all compelled to kill themselves by jumping off a cliff. You see, people can't quiz him on the reasons for the biblical Jesus' actions, and they can't call him out on not knowing certain aspects of the biblical Jesus' life, because in both cases, AJ has got an easy out card. He can very easily just say, oh, nah, that never really happened, mate. Now, you'll remember me saying earlier that before AJ realised that he was Jesus, he was actually a member or leader in Jehovah's Witness branch in his South Australian town. What I find really fascinating about this is that a lot of his old Jehovah's Witness ideology seems to have crept into his understanding of himself and the sorts of things that he preaches. To get into detail on some of this stuff, I'm going to have to talk a little bit about who the Jehovah's Witnesses actually are. First misconception. These are Mormons, not Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, they'll both come to your door, but the Jehovah's Witnesses look pretty normal by comparison, and they don't wear magic underwear. The Christian faith as a whole goes back almost 2,000 years in the Middle East. The unique roots of the branch of Christianity that we call Jehovah's Witnesses, that stretches back to about 1870 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That is a long-ass time of Christianity being around before the Jehovah's Witnesses came along with their unique version of Christianity. So we've got Jesus, then Constantine, the Dark Ages, East-West split, First Crusade, Medieval Inquisition, witch trials, and then finally, the Jehovah's Witnesses arrive to reveal to Christendom that they've been misinterpreting the Bible all along.
What? What the fuck?
Hi, sir. I'm going around the neighborhood and seeing if you've accepted Jesus Christ in your life. He's a wonderful person and...
In 1870, a poorly educated American preacher called Charles Taze Russell decided to get to the real truth in Scripture by working on his own English translation of the Bible from the original languages that the earliest copies of the texts are in. I can kind of respect that. I mean, why rely on someone else's potentially biased translation that may have all kinds of subtle manipulations when you can just pick up some Greek and Hebrew dictionaries and create your own translation that you can trust? Here's where things get interesting. Charles Taze Russell wasn't particularly well educated, and he decided that he'd do his biblical translations word by word. Why are Jehovah's Witnesses so dramatically different to so many other types of modern Christianity? This is the reason, that this whole idea of translating the oldest texts from their original languages into modern English, word by word, it's the main reason. Most people who know or who have studied other languages are aware that not every word in one language has a direct translation in another language.
Because a lot of times when you translate things, there could be different meanings to things.
You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that can go wrong.
Right.
You know, especially nowadays, people go, oh, I'm going to go to Google Translate. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah. and then like even the combinations will change the meaning.
Exactly.
That's what's crazy. 迅笨. So swiftly stupid.
Wow. He didn't check the
like
meaning on
fast
that one.
dumb.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So the Jehovah's Witnesses have a unique version of the Bible, and all of those little translational differences result in all kinds of wacky fun. Hey kids, I'm Jay Witt the Clown! Celebrating Christmas is an unchristian thing to do. There is no hell. If you've been good and you die, you won't go to heaven. No, no, no. You'll have an eternal life on a restored planet Earth that resembles the Garden of Eden. God is not really responsible for creation. Instead, God created the Archangel Michael, and Michael created everything else. Did you know that Jesus wasn't crucified? Nuh-uh, he died on a punishment stake, not a cross, more like a straight pole.
What the fuck?
Every Jehovah's Witness is supposed to do 10 hours a month of home Bible study and door-to-door preaching, distributing their literature. AJ was involved in that practice for decades before he remembered that he's Jesus. That huge amount of training at selling new people on religious bullshit had to come in handy when he finally remembered his Jesushood. That's important. He wasn't just like a regular non-religious dude who happened to suddenly remember that he was Jesus and then miraculously attracted tons of people to him. No. Before he remembered that he was Jesus, he was a very, very well-rehearsed religious salesman who was very familiar with a leadership role among a flock of devotees. He had decades to hone his skills as a charismatic public speaker who had every opportunity to become familiar with the details in the Christian texts and develop his own backstory. He had decades to set up his bullshit lie. Here's my point. If I was looking for a con man to convincingly pretend to be Jesus, someone with AJ's background, his training, his experience, that's exactly who you'd choose. Let's give this guy the benefit of the doubt and pretend for a moment that he really believes his own fairy tale. Even if we grant that, we should still all notice that we live in a world where people can be wrong about things, people can be mistaken, people can be deluded, tricked, fooled, etc. If AJ isn't a complete knowing fraud and genuinely believes his own Jesushood, that doesn't contribute in the slightest to whether or not his claims are factual. And even if you notice that he's charming, charismatic, biblically knowledgeable, a useful life coach, that also doesn't help prove that he's Jesus. Partially because those traits are exactly the kind of personality traits you'd expect him to have owing to his decades of practice. Look, even if religions weren't complete bullshit, which they are, for the reasons I've just explained, there would still be every reason to doubt that AJ is Jesus. You might think that AJ thinks that he's particularly special in that he's getting to have a second mortal existence here on Earth. But, according to him, he's not actually alone. No, the plot thickens.
I have very clear memories of the crucifixion, but it wasn't as harrowing for me as it was for Mary and others who were present.
According to him, there are 14 people total, or 7 man-woman couples on Earth today, who are back for a second life. Many of these people have come to him and made themselves known. Reborn Jesus ain't alone. Nope, first there's a reborn Mary Magdalene.
Mary is Mary Suzanne Luck, who also claims strong biblical links to the past.
Mary was Mary Magdalene in the first century.
Who's now your girlfriend?
Yes,
partner?
my girlfriend, partner.
More on her later, but there's a reborn Luke, a reborn John the Baptist, Gospel John, Mark, even Cornelius, the Roman centurion considered the first Gentile convert to Christianity in Christian tradition.
There's a special 13, his chosen apostles, who Miller says have been reincarnated to spread his message.
I'm called Cornelius, and that was my name in the first century, and my identity, my soul identity.
At Mergen, I met Cornelius and Jody, who left her husband to follow Miller. both believe they lived at the time of Christ.
So you knew Jesus? As such, I saw him and listened to what he was saying. I did come across him once and I asked him about one of my servants that was sick and he healed the servant. I was just quite amazed by what he did until the time came where we were asked to go and execute him. And then when my troops had to go and nail him to the stake, it was like a pole.
Ah, did you hear that? That's interesting. He's not talking about the cross, but the punishment stake. That's very telling. It suggests that AJ's Jesus is a Jehovah's Witness flavoured Jesus because his closest and oldest followers subscribe to the idea that he was not crucified, but killed on a punishment stake. Well, that's interesting. Maybe AJ should reinforce this fact to some of his followers who don't have Jehovah's Witness backgrounds and naively believe in the crucifixion. You know, like on an actual cross, because if you have a look at the area of land that his flock allegedly occupies on Google Maps from the sky, his followers kind of cleared the bushland to look like a mainstream Christian cross. Oops. Sorry, Jesus. We didn't mean to be inaccurate.
Are you kidding me?
AJ Miller shares his home in central Queensland with a woman 13 years his junior.
The way that I first met AJ was at a talk in my parents' home. They had invited him to be there and he just happened to be in our living room giving a talk, and that's how we met, yeah.
One of the remarkable ironies of your life
Yes.
is the role of your parents.
My parents told me that that they had found out through someone else that AJ felt that I was his soulmate.
A former aid worker, she was born Mary Luck, but AJ has convinced her that she is Mary Magdalene.
So what's happened with you and your family?
I feel quite sad about it, David, yeah. Just that they don't accept what I want to do with my life at the moment. They don't agree with the way I'm living it.
But they introduced you.
I know, yeah.
The Jehovah's Witnesses have got a long history of predicting the end of the world, the apocalypse, and that other sort of crap. And that's something else that AJ's got in common with his form of faith. He's made some pretty bold predictions, and in fact, 3 times he's already incorrectly predicted global catastrophes. Jehovah's Witnesses have laughably gotten their predictions wrong so many times that they actually stopped putting a date on the end times. Nowadays, for them, the impending doom is just always around the corner. This approach helps them avoid further embarrassment. On the other side of things, public embarrassment does not look like the sort of thing that AJ is particularly keen to avoid, in that he continues to put his wrong predictions about the end of the world on tape and on the internet.
Let's look at some of the things I know that you've said were going to happen, you know, like that a continent was going to rise next door to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Cause a 100-metre tsunami that would sweep over Australia.
I'll go further than that if you wish.
And there was going to be an earthquake, a devastating earthquake, and so on. You made those predictions.
And all of these things are going to happen.
The Earth itself is going to change a lot in the next few years. And what you now know as countries, some of them will disappear completely, other ones will change completely.
I'd like to meet you in 10 years' time and see.
Can I make a prediction for you, David?
Okay.
You're going to want me to meet me much sooner than 10 years' time. So I'm perfectly happy to speak with you should you be here on Earth in 4 years' time, or whether you should be in the spirit world in 4 years' time.
Check out these badass Jesus tweets. Ugh, how do you come back from being that wrong that often? Well, here's how.
Communicating with spirits is not an exact science.
We've covered some pretty laughable shit about AJ's various shenanigans, but how harmful is he really? I mean, is it appropriate to call him the patriarch of a cult? I mean, this guy is a joke, but is he a dangerous joke? Yes.
The Reverend David Milliken has studied cults for 30 years, has met AJ Miller and fears for his followers.
The danger is that you'll be drawn closer and closer into his web
One of his techniques to draw people in is to demand that they find emotional trauma in their family history.
Let yourself feel what it was like to have to shut yourself down so much just to please your mother. Because that's what she wants. That's what she wants you to do. Shut you down so much. And she was giving you all of these things, but she wants a heap of things in return from you, and that feels bad to you. So allow yourself to connect with that. That's it. And as you connect to that, you will start really connecting. That's it. And as you connect, that's how much rage is there. You see, this is the childhood rage now. You see that?
Cult leaders are dangerous, and there are 5 primary ways that cult leaders mind control their followers and exert their will over them.
You have convinced Mary that she was Mary Magdalene.
How has he convinced me?
You did not think that you were Mary Magdalene
I never
before you
even
met
told
AJ.
Mary she was Mary Magdalene.
You didn't tell her?
No,
he didn't.
I did not. So how can you say I convinced Mary?
Well, after she meets you, she begins to think that she's Mary Magdalene.
Well, that's her. I never spoke to her
You had no thoughts
it.
about that beforehand, did you?
No, but to be honest, I really had no idea who Mary Magdalene was.
How many Mary Magdalenes have there been in your life?
There's only one Mary Magdalene in my life.
But there's been others. Is it 2, 3?
No, you're not asking me, you're telling me.
All right, I'm asking you.
Okay.
Asking me, you're telling me. All right, I'm asking you. Okay. Did you tell other girls before Mary that they were Mary Magdalene?
I told, yes, definitely. One girl.
Mr. Miller seems to use his position as Jesus to get sexual favors from women that he is attracted to. And so he says, well, this woman is Mary Magdalene. Wait a minute, no, this woman is Mary Magdalene. It reminds me of many other so-called cult leaders that I've run into over the years who use their position of spiritual authority to get what they want sexually, financially, in whatever means they wish from the people that become their followers.
The website, ajmiller.com, basically the website that inspired me to make this video, covers all of this quite well, so check that out if you're interested in a little bit more depth on the topic. But basically, AJ, the cult leader, hits all 5 of the mind-controlling cult leader checkpoints.
I think you are at the early stages of becoming a cult leader.
Well...
It's torn my life to pieces. I've lost my wife, I've lost my home, I've lost my family. It's been tremendously devastating.
In San Francisco, I met Dugan McVerk, whose wife, Jennifer, fell under Miller's spell. Tell me about Jen before she knew AJ.
Yeah, Jennifer was one of the most effervescent and lively spirits put into a body that I'd ever seen. With some of the most amazing connections that I've ever had with another human being.
So in that relationship, what happened for yourself is it just triggered more of that childhood hurt that you felt with men.
Jennifer was introduced to Miller's teaching by 2 Australian friends and became captivated. She would watch and listen up to 5 hours a day.
Every day, there would be more downloads, and it was continuous. I watched Jen over the course of a month or so basically become so absorbed in it that it seemed to be the whole focus for her. It was everything that she would be listening to. She came to me with tears and said to me, Dugan, he really is Jesus. AJ really is Jesus.
Unbeknown to her husband, she began donating money to Miller and communicating by phone and email. Miller raised doubts about whether her husband was her soulmate.
Apparently, there's some requirement for soulmates, according to A.J. Miller, which brought into our relationship the innuendo of doubt as to whether or not she and I were soulmates. It was as if there was a third party sitting right between us all the time. And I was watching Jennifer basically just disappear.
Within 5 months, Jennifer left Dugan and planned to come to Australia to be with Miller. Desperate, Dugan contacted Rick Ross, America's leading cult deprogrammer, to stage an intervention.
When Dugan first contacted me, he was very worried, and he was hoping that somehow through an intervention they might reconcile.
I am out of here.
The intervention failed.
Basically, Miller sets himself up as God. He is Jesus Christ. He is the God-man. And if you disagree with him, you disagree with God. So if you have a spouse or a family member and they are critical of Miller, they have come against God. And therefore, they are not spiritually right for you. Or as Miller might say, they are not your soulmate.
When a cult leader or any leader of any group claims that they are Jesus, they elevate themselves to that divine status. And when they are of the divine, when they are in fact God here on earth, God incarnate, then you can't question them, because to question them, you're actually questioning God.
What has AJ achieved? He's drawn people to him from all around the world. He's completely convinced loads of people that he is Jesus. Educated, first world people. He's convinced them so completely that they've taken his advices regarding leaving their partners, about donating to his ministry, and that his supernatural claims are legitimate.
Luli Favour is British and a former neuroscientist. She's given up her career to move near the couple.
Yes, he is. He is Jesus.
AJ Miller has said that he's a reincarnation of Jesus. Are you convinced?
I have no reason to believe that he's not.
He's a bringer of truth. I feel that he is the Messiah. He's the messenger of God's truth.
Yes, he's Jesus, and yes, Mary's Mary Magdalene.
George Hamill recently left his business and wife in California to get closer to AJ Miller and his teachings.
You believe he's Jesus, do you? I do, yeah.
Yesterday morning I left my husband after 30 years. And
Yesterday morning?
Yes.
There are hundreds more who believe he is Jesus, and many thousands who are intrigued by his teachings.
Through DVDs, the internet and in person, AJ is spreading his word around the world. Followers are invited to make donations.
Certainly, there are a lot more opportunities in this coming than in the first coming. Obviously, in the first coming, we could only spend time sharing with people through the word of mouth. Whereas in this coming, we've got things like, technology to share the truth with people.
If this is what some bullshit IT consultant Aussie Bogan Fucknugget is capable of in 2017, when his educated first world victims have the means to fact check his crap online in a matter of minutes, what kind of ridiculousness do you think the original Jesus would have been able to convince his Wikipedia-less followers of in the 1st century? If this is how convincing modern Australian Jesus can be in the current day to arseloads of people, what does that say about the original Jesus and his ability to convince a much smaller band of his divinity? Makes you think, doesn't it? Yes, this guy is not the world's most dangerous threat at the moment, I get it. So why have I elected to make the longest video on any topic I've ever made all about him? I don't know, this whole AJ thing is just... it's fascinating and depressing, all in one. If I expect people to work out that religions are bullshit, what hope is there for that when countless people can't even work out that this one single fucking guy is bullshit? So, fuck Australian Jesus. Fuck Jesus. Fuck you too.